1, 2, 3, 4, now she's ready, now it's time. A Boston girl who knows true crime. She got cash, attitude, gotta put you in a dark blue. She knows Sunday, she knows summer, now she's ready, now it's time. A Boston girl who knows true crime. She got cash, attitude, gotta put you in a dark blue. She knows Sunday, she knows summer, uniform. Penny after dark.
Hi, and welcome to Danny After Dark. If you're new here, make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss a notification or a new episode. Tonight, I'll be featuring the case of Kenneth, I knew I was going to butcher it right away, Kenneth McDuff, the Broomstick murderer. And this was a case recommendation by friend of the show, Morbid Punk 8634. So thank you for the recommendation. So before we dive into the case, let's see who's here, and we can go ahead and get started. Hey, James Watson, Capone, Mr. Jenks. Let's see, Kane, hello. Tony Stewart. Let's see, Chris James, hello. Liz, thank you. Tony Stewart, hello. I will let my cats know that you said hello for sure. You love the pic with the glasses. Oh, yeah, that outfit. Yeah, I know which picture you're talking about. Yeah, that's my, I went out in that outfit, went into Boston with that outfit. Clearly making a statement with a shirt that said the husband did it. Hey, Firefly. Let's see. Hi, Eric. Good to see you. So this case, I must say, I did not know this case until it was recommended. So it was very interesting doing the research because I had not heard about it at all. So I didn't know what I was getting into, and I just let the research, do its thing. And yeah, very interesting. So I'm curious if you guys have heard of this case as well, or if this is a new one to you too. Let's see. Hey, the better Paul, welcome. Good to see you. So let's dive into the case of Kenneth McDuff. So Kenneth was born on March 21st, 1946 in Rosebud, Texas. His parents were John Allen and Addie McDuff. He was the fifth of 6 children. His father ran a successful concrete business during the Texas construction boom in the 1960s. In high school, Kenneth earned the reputation of being a bully. He would target weaker classmates, knowing that he could just overpower them. Also because he once lost a fight that he had picked with one of the athletes in school. So that was a driving motivation as well. Kenneth ended up quitting school and went to work for his father's business doing manual labor. August 6th, 1966, Kenneth had his first conviction for raping and murdering 3 teenagers, Robert Brand, Mark Dunman, and Anna Louise Sullivan. Kenneth didn't commit that my gosh, it's going to be one of those nights. I knew it. Today was one of those days. So my apologies if I stumble on my words more so than usual. So Kenneth did not commit those crimes alone. He had help. So his partner was a 17-year-old named Roy Dale Green. This crime became known as the Broomstick Murders. So Roy told police how Kenneth grabbed the trio at a ballpark, forced the boys into the trunk of the car, and shot them in the face while they begged for mercy. In an isolated field south of Fort Worth, Kenneth then forced Roy to rape the terrified young woman before strangling her with a broomstick. Roy stated that Kenneth bragged about the crime, saying that Edna Sullivan was not his first sexual assault victim, nor would she be his last. Quote, killing a woman is like killing a chicken, end quote. He also added, quote, they both squawk, end quote. Roy, he was sentenced to 4 months house arrest and 5 years probation. Kenneth, he didn't get so lucky. he was sentenced to death for these murders. So this must be where the case ends, right? Not even close. But before we continue, let's see what you guys are saying about this case so far. Let's see. Tony Stewart. Hey, Danny, my New Year's resolution is trying to get along with you better. Timeouts get old. Tony, you know what, hon? You're going to get a star for that. That is an incredible resolution, and it makes me so happy. Hey, Tony L. Good to see you. You're number one. Let's see. James, my resolution to see how close I can get to timeout without getting timed out. Oh my God, you guys. Hi, Captain McDonald. Good to see you. And for those of you who are watching who are not in the chat, thank you for joining. And don't let those in the chat intimidate you. We're a nice bunch of people, except James Watson, for the most part. So, where we picked up, Kenneth was sentenced to death for those murders. However, in 1972, the death sentence was overturned when the U.S. Supreme Court abolished capital punishment. He now was to serve life with the possibility of parole. In 1981, Kenneth attempted to buy his way out of prison. What he tried to do was bribe a member of a parole board with a $10,000 payoff. Well, this led him to getting convicted of bribery. In 1989, due to the extremely crowded Texas prisons, Kenneth was paroled and released from jail. Upon release, what did Kenneth do? Well, he was immediately arrested for a series of parole violations. However, he was never locked up for any substantial length of time. Once released, he then got a job at a gas station, making $4 an hour, and took a class at Texas State Technical College in Waco. December 30th, 1991, 28-year-old Colleen Reed was abducted from an Austin car wash. She was raped, tortured, and murdered. March 1st, 1992, Melissa Ann Northrup was abducted from a Waco convenience store where she worked. Her body surfaced weeks later in a Dallas County gravel pit. Her hands were tied behind her, and she had been strangled with a rope. Kenneth, he was now a wanted man in connection with both of the murders. But Kenneth decided to take his chances on the run. So as a wanted fugitive, he fled to Kansas City. But he was eventually captured due to a tip-off. Turns out he was featured on a television show. You may have heard of it, America's Most Wanted. Well, Kenneth, he went on trial for these murders. And during the trial, one sheriff described Kenneth as the most remorseless and sadistic killer he had ever met. Quote, Kenneth McDuff is absolutely the most vicious and savage individual I know. He has absolutely no conscience, and I think he enjoys killing, end quote. Well, Kenneth was convicted for the murders and sent to death row. Now, this must be again where the story ends. Unfortunately, that is not the case. This is one of those true crime cases that back and forth. So pause for a moment and just see where you guys are. Let's see. Hi, Bill. Good to see you. Let's see. It would not be a true Danny After Dark chat if you guys weren't talking about coffee. I absolutely love how you guys are so addicted to caffeine and that like overtakes the whole show. Hi, Morbid Punk. Good to see you. Welcome. So Kenneth was sent to death row. Well, this time things would play out slightly different, but not like it did before. So Kenneth was scheduled to be executed, and he asked for a final meal. His attorneys were at the U.S. Supreme Court, however, seeking a delay so that additional tests could be conducted on hair samples that attorneys said linked him to Melissa Ann Northrup's murder. Both requests, they were denied, and the High Court refused to stop the execution from being carried out. Now, this is where Kenneth would receive his due. November 17th, 1998, Kenneth McDuff was executed by lethal injection. When asked if he had any final statements, he said, quote, "I'm ready to be released. Release me," end quote. He made no other comments. He gasped several times and then exhaled before slipping into unconsciousness. 8 minutes later, at 6:26 p.m., he was pronounced dead. Kenneth's body, it was never claimed by any of his family. He is buried in the cemetery of the prison where he was executed. His grave marker only has his death row number, X999055. Authorities say that Kenneth may have killed as many as a dozen other people, primarily in Central Texas between Austin and Waco. That is the case of Kenneth McDuff. And again, big thank you for this case suggestion by Morbid Punk 8634. Kenneth is also known as the Broomstick Murderer. So, do you guys have any questions or comments about this case? The research, I do have to say, was there wasn't as much known, or as much that I could gather as some of the more high profile cases. So this one did have a little bit lacking. And I was hoping, however, to get more on, I was really fascinated personally by the tip for America's Most Wanted. I was really trying to find that clip online, but I just couldn't find it. So if you guys find it, let me know, because I would really love to see his feature and see ultimately what led him to be caught. And this was one of those cases, and I'm again curious if you guys agree or disagree with this, where we go back and we see where there was these opportunities where future crimes could have been prevented. He was already, as we saw earlier, sentenced to death, but that got overturned. And then he got possibility of parole. And then it wasn't that he was released due to fulfilling, his obligations, being, a good inmate. He was released simply because the prisons were overpopulated. But again, during these times, he was not the only one that would have been released and got out early. But you just it begs the question, had he, even if he just got sentenced to life without the possibility of parole, he would have stayed in and other lives would have been saved. It really blows my mind that based on the depravity and the viciousness of his crimes, that he was released so easily just because of overpopulation. That I'm sure that didn't sit well with the community then, and I'm sure it still doesn't sit well with the community now. It doesn't sit well for me. It's very heartbreaking. And I just think of the families of those who were future victims who think this could have been avoided. Had he stayed in prison where he belonged, this could have been prevented. Another thing that I noticed with this case is, and we could do a whole episode on this about last words of people being executed. That is always fascinating. Some, beg for it not to happen. Some are just, I don't want to say at peace with it, but they don't fight it. And then there are some that are just downright angry and disrespectful on their way out, which that to me is not really surprising. But for this, his comment was, and I would have loved to have gotten more context, where he says, "I'm ready to be released, release me." He made no other comments, but I would have loved to have got a little bit more in the research of his tone with that. Was it a full acceptance of what was happening? Was it, "I'm angry, let's just get this done with, I'm ready, release me, let's go" type of thing? That I would have liked to have gotten more information on, but I couldn't obtain. But it kind of, again, I just kind of read that and thought, okay, where is that aligning with other people who have been executed in regards to last words? Because I just find that whole thing fascinating, but that's just me. But it was also one other point, and then I promise I will stop talking as much. It was interesting that his body wasn't claimed by family. In regards to now he is buried at the prison, and all that is there is his death row number. That was very interesting to me. And I would have liked to get more information on, with that prison, how many are there that are buried there because family just simply does not want to claim them, whether it is because they shut that part of their life out, they no longer have anything to do with that family member, or if it's just cut ties, leave them where they are. They don't want to be associated and have anything further to do. It's just very interesting. And yeah, Kenneth, as we left off, is suspected of committing more crimes. So yeah, that's very interesting on that end. Again, I knew nothing about this case, nothing at all. So it was very interesting for me to learn about it as I went. So what do you guys think? Is there anything that stuck out to you, and whether in a positive or a negative with this case, or what are your thoughts? I'm opening the floor to you guys. So let's go back to see where you are. All right, you still are going on about your coffee talk. Coffee and cats. Okay. You know what? You guys really know the way to my heart, and I clearly know the way to yours. We have so much in common. Let's see. Lady Witch. Oh, hi, Lady Witch. Good to see you. Now I know I'm in the right place. I'm a caffeine junkie. Oh my God. You are definitely in the right place. That is for sure. Let's see. Yep. True crime, cats, and coffee. That should be like my new way of the show. Let's see. Morbid Punk says his victim Edna was buried in the next town over from me. Really? I used to visit her when I was out that way. Interesting. I did not know that you were so physically close to this case. Tony Stewart, you are being fresh. How did this guy keep getting parole? Thank you for bringing up the elephant in the room. I don't know, and it's very frustrating. And I get that we're looking at it, we have the whole picture now. And parole boards, the courts, they don't. They just know where they are up to now, where we know what happens after and so on. But still, the attacks and the broomstick murders, what he first became, kind of known for and went to prison for some significant time. I mean, he was sentenced to death for those murders. And yet I understand that the U.S. Supreme Court abolished capital punishment. I get that. Whether people agree with that or not is another conversation, but I get that. I don't agree that he was then given life with the possibility of parole. I think that was too lenient. I'm sure the families would agree. I'm sure the victims' families from what crimes were going to come would agree. It doesn't make sense. The sentence he was then converted to, it does not make sense. It does not fit that crime. And then he tried to bribe his way out of prison by paying off like a member of the parole board. Granted, he got caught in that. Again, he got convicted of bribery on top of what he was serving. Yet he was released due to extreme crowded Texas prisons. Now, I don't know what the Texas prison system was like in 1989, so I have no way of comparing, here's what he's in for, here's what everybody else was in for, who's the better candidate to keep in. I don't know that. But based on what he was in there for in the first place, I don't see other people. I don't know, unless there were just that many horrific crimes happening in that area of similar caliber, and his just happened to be not as gruesome. I don't know. It does not make sense. It does not make sense. And again, when he got released, he had all those parole violations. Didn't serve a lot of time for that. It's just, Keen, you bring up that good point of, again, just being let off the hook. And what happens? It's so unfortunate. So unfortunate. Let's see. Hi, Troy. Good to see you. Welcome. All right, Tony Stewart, calm down. Calm down. Morbid Punky had an accomplice in her murder. I think he's still in prison. I think his last name was Pruitt. Pruitt. I did not find Pruitt. What I found for the crime for the Broomstick murders was Roy Dale Green. And I did not do follow up on Roy Dale Green. I focused more so with my research on Kenneth. So I am very interested in Pruitt. If you have a first name, I would love to know that so that I can deep dive into that. Because, yeah, I didn't come across that. But I'm also fascinated that this is your area. And I thank you for saying that and saying that, on publicly on YouTube. It really gives, I feel, a lot of context when having you guys in the chat who are not only familiar with this case, but are from that area. Because like you said, you've driven by, so you know the layout, you know the lay of the land. And not all of us do. I certainly don't. So it just puts things into perspective a bit more. I do have family in Texas, so I am a bit familiar with, certain areas of Texas, but not necessarily this area where these crimes occurred. So for me, that is a little bit more foreign, but yeah, that is that. So, all right, just catching up on the chat to see where you guys are with that. I feel like, oh my gosh, you guys are so funny. It's definitely, I don't know about you guys, but this week has been definitely one of those, although it's only Tuesday, it's one of those long weeks. And I feel like we're all, and I'm not just speaking for myself, but just speaking to people that, friends, family, coworkers, we're, it's like the first week, full week back from work in several weeks, just due to holidays. So it's like very extra dragging this week where I'm like, oh man, it's really only Tuesday. It feels like it should be Thursday. You know what I mean? So it's one of those, like, even as I went live, I was just like, oh man, it's one of those weeks, but yet it's still so early in the week, which is just, crazy. But other than that, yes, Morbid Punk, if you're not able to find the first name of Pruitt when the show ends, if you're able to, when the video stays up, if you could post it in the comments, that would be awesome. Because I know I personally would love to deep dive this a little bit more. Because yeah, this case is very, very new to me. Capone says, today is my first Friday. Well, let's just brag, why don't ya? Hey, Auntie Mimi, welcome. Good to see you. Bill says, I've been a rather difficult week for me personally, Danny, very hard. Bill, I'm so sorry to hear that, hon. That's awful. I will message you later. So, okay, just double checking where you guys are in the chat. So yeah, if there's not a lot more, questions or comments about this case right now, I think I might just kind of wrap this one up. It was one of those shorter cases, as I mentioned earlier, but with that being said, just as interesting in regards to, and Kane, you put it, let me go back to your comment, and I want to start because you said it just so, you captured the essence of this case. How did this guy keep getting paroled? How did this guy keep getting, slaps on the wrist, and look at the end result? That's one of the frustrations with this case, unfortunately. So yeah, other than that, thank you guys for joining me for another episode of Danny After Dark. And thank you again to Morbid Punk for this case recommendation. If you guys have any other case recommendations, I have a whole list going. So if I don't get to it right away, my apologies. I'm trying to my best to fit it all in and go from there. But yes, certainly feel free to either comment on a video with your case suggestion, send me a message through Instagram, my Danny After Dark account, or yeah, during my live shows is typically, I know that's where some of you guys do it, which is fine. I just can't always get back to the timestamp where it is to write it down. So commenting it on a video or a DM is the best way to make sure that I get it and put it on the list for you guys. So other than that, again, thank you guys for joining me for another episode. And I will be back later this week with the True Crime and Chill. So remember, everybody, we don't live in darkness. Darkness lives in us. Bye, everyone.